The Pilot MYU was first introduced in 1971. It was offered in the stainless steel that we have here today, an upscaled version that had stripes going down the length of the pen, and a resin model that was less expensive. It was in production until 1977, at which point it was replaced with the full-size Murex, and that was produced into the 1980s. Also, in 2008, Pilot re-released the MYU as a limited model called the M90. It looked very similar to the pen that we have here, however it was a little bit thicker, it had a different clasping mechanism, and the top finial was replaced with a blue jewel. While this pen was in production, it did not sell very well in Japan, but in the coming years, it became one of the most sought-after vintage models that Pilot ever produced. In the hand, the pen is very compact, and the design is largely dominated by this cap. The bottom finial is flat with a slight dome shape. The top finial has a black cap that's tilted towards the clip, and the clip is part of a chrome piece that goes around the top of the pen. The clip is a bent metal clip that's springy and functional. As we work our way down the cap, we have engraving at the very bottom that says Pilot, and nothing on the back. The cap is a pull-off cap, which reveals the most striking feature of this pen, and that's its integrated nib. An integrated nib is a nib and a section that's all made out of one piece. In this case, it's the same brushed stainless steel that we have on the rest of the pen body. And on the back, we have a shiny black plastic feed. As with all Pilot nibs, towards the bottom, we have a marking to show the size and the date code. Here we have F for fine, H for the plant of Hiroshika, 1 for the month of January, and 76 for the year is produced. Below that, we have a series of nubs that act as a clasping mechanism. Then there's a small metal band followed by a step up to the barrel that is very short. In the hand, the pen has some heft because it's mostly made out of stainless steel. It's very small but suitable for note-taking, and the cap does post deeply and securely to create a full-length pen that is very well balanced in the hand. And the ability to transform like that is why this pen was called a long short in its day, but today we would call it a pocket pen. In terms of size comparisons, here we have the Pilot MYU, a typical G2 rollerball pen, and your standard Sharpie. And here are those pens posted. Before we get into the disassembly of the Pilot MYU, I wanted to take a moment here to compare it with two other vintage models. These pens were both made in the 1970s. The top model here is the Pilot Elite, which was made in the same Hiroshika plant as the Pilot MYU. And we can see there's a lot of similarities. It's another pocket pen, though this one is mostly made out of resin. And the clip is just about the same size, but it is a spring-loaded hinge clip. Even the finials have similarities. Both are tilted towards the clip. The other pen I wanted to compare this to is down here. It's the Parker 50, also called the Falcon. And in this form, there aren't very many similarities. This pen was also offered in a stainless steel, which probably looks a little bit more like the MYU. But we'll see when we uncap it that there are some other similarities. Uncapped, we see that the Elite and the MYU are again about the same size, whereas the Falcon is quite a bit longer as it is a full-size fountain pen. But then we also see more similarities between the MYU and the Falcon. Both have integrated nibs that are made out of stainless steel. The Falcon has a satin coating that gives you some grip, but also is extremely fragile and easy to scratch, whereas the Pilot MYU has just a standard brushed stainless steel grip. And the Elite, on the other hand, has a very similar shaped section, but it's mostly made out of plastic, and rather than a stainless steel nib, it has a nice 14 karat gold nib. Let's take a look at these pens posted. All caps are excellent posters. The Elite is actually a little bit longer than the MYU when it's posted, and the Parker is just about the same size as the MYU. To disassemble the Pilot MYU, the cap pulls off. And unfortunately, there is no easy way to disassemble this cap further. For regular maintenance and cleaning, I would just recommend flushing it with water. If we look inside, I'll pull in some LED lighting. there is a captured cap liner that helps keep the nib nice and inked up. The barrel unscrews from the section, and there's a collar that unscrews from the section as well. Attached to this collar is a little metal ring. And then for the section, again, there is not an easy way to disassemble this further. If I pull in that LED lighting, we can see there is a feed that you can access from the back. You do need a special tool in order to unscrew this, or you could try and use it with pliers, but I really don't recommend that. If your nib is in good shape, I wouldn't touch this, as you could damage it and it's virtually impossible to replace. But at this point, you have the pen fully disassembled. To reassemble, we'll start with the section and the collar. Put the ring on top of the collar, and then screw that into the section. Followed by the barrel. And then lastly, our cap. And now we're ready to ink up. To ink up the Pilot MYU, you could use the Pilot Con 40 converter, but personally, I'm not a fan, so I would opt for a cartridge. Barrel unscrews. Grab your cartridge, place it in, push it down, and the barrel screws back on. Give it a few minutes, ink will start flowing into the nib, and we'll be ready to write. Okay, writing with the Pilot MYU. Cap pulls off, and I am going to post it. The nib is noted down here, stainless steel fine, just like the rest of the section. The nib is very well tuned, about as well as any other stainless steel that I have. There's a little bit of bounce, mostly smooth with a little bit of feedback. Our ink. This is the standard Pilot Blue. For flex, being very careful. You can push out a little bit of line variation, but again, you need to be really careful as these nibs are irreplaceable. For reverse writing, it's very scratchy, doesn't really provide you much of a thinner line. The feed did keep up though, so there is that, but I wouldn't recommend this pen for reverse writing. So what do I think of the Pilot MYU? Chances are you're looking at this pen if you are into the Streamlined design, which I very much am. I love flighters, and this is kind of the ultimate flighter, having very few seams when you uncap it. The pen is comfortable in the hand, it's well balanced, it posts extremely deeply and securely to make for a comfortable writing experience. If I were to be honest, for journaling, I would prefer the Pilot Elite for two main reasons. It has a 14 karat gold nib that's tuned extremely well, and that resin body is a little bit more forgiving in the hand for long-term writing. But in terms of integrated nibs, there aren't very many options out there. I did show you the side-by-side with the Parker 50. Parker did have a model called the T1 that came out before either of these two. That one was made out of titanium. It was extremely short-lived in production. They had lots of production issues. And nowadays, they're virtually impossible to find. The price for them would be well beyond either of these two pens. But between these two pens, the Pilot is about twice as much as the Parker on the used market. And surprisingly, I find the Pilot to be a much more durable and practical pen. And that's really for two main reasons that are all centered around the integrated nib. The Pilot's nib is just better tuned. It's smoother, it has more bounce, whereas the Parker is a little bit rougher to write with, and it's really like writing with a nail. But also the section. Pilot decided to use a brushed stainless steel that matches the rest of the pen body. If it gets scratched, it's easy to buff out. Whereas Parker has this satin finish that feels nice in the hand, it gives you good grip, but it is extremely delicate, easy to scratch up, to the point where I would not consider taking this pen out of the house, but also I'm hesitant to even ink up this pen because I'm afraid during the capping and uncapping that I might scratch that finish. So for those reasons, I would say the Pilot is the winner in that respect. In terms of fountain pen collections, like I said, there's basically no other pen that's designed like this. And because it's a vintage model that's no longer in production, the value of this is just going to keep going up. So if you're a fan of the Streamlined design that came out in the mid-century, I think this is pretty much a must-have pen. And that just leaves me to say, thank you for watching.